Good afternoon, everyone, from Washington, D.C., actually Annapolis, Maryland. We just finished up our first conference here in about 2 years. So interestingly enough, Kirsten and I are in the same room together. It's kind of interesting coming out of COVID. But thank you all for joining. I'm sure folks, because we're just at the top of the hour, folks are going to be jumping on here. But today, as a part of our DevOps community of practice, TechSync, Adam, Tim, and crew are coming in from Crunchy Data. Again, for everyone, this is an opportunity. This event, this recurring event, which is bi-weekly, is an opportunity for vendors to get on stage and help you understand what their product can do for you. Whether you're migrating products, data, and services to the cloud, you're starting to go agile, or you're starting to build out that DevSecOps pipeline and tool chain. This is an opportunity for those vendors to, in a very open, transparent way, pitch you on their product and help you understand how their product can help you in your DevOps journey. So really, without any further ado, one last reminder. Not only is this bi-weekly, but this content will be shared onto YouTube. Feel free to be following us on LinkedIn and share it with your colleagues. Not everybody can attend an event in a particular time and space, and also interest in content grows over time. That someone today in government may need to hear about this 2 months from now, and so having that content available is wonderful. So anyway, without any further ado, Adam, over to you, sir.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you, inviting us on to talk today. First off, before I get too far into it, just want to confirm that you can see the slides that I'm sharing. Should see a blue screen that says Crunchy Data enabling DevOps with Crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, everyone. And again, Brian and Kirsten, thanks for inviting Crunchy Data to talk to the group today. So we've only got 30 minutes today. We're going to try and cover a lot of ground and finish up with a short tech demo. But if I cover something too quickly, you have more questions, my contact info is on the screen there. You've got our website on the screen. Feel free to reach out to myself or anyone at Crunchy if you'd like to learn more about Crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes or any of our distributions. And with that, I'm going to jump into a little bit about who Crunchy is at first, for those of you that aren't familiar with us, and then go into a little bit more about DevOps and how we enable that. So Crunchy Data is your partner for deploying Postgres throughout the federal government in general, as well as we do have a growing commercial sector. We provide market-leading data security, cloud-ready data management. We are built for the enterprise. I'm going to go a little bit into more detail on that in just a minute. And we are 100% open source. So for those of you that are familiar with Postgres, it's an open source relational database. It's the open source equivalent to Oracle, if you're familiar with Oracle. And because of that, there are no license costs. And Crunchy Data provides support for that, for not only our Postgres distributions, but any community distributions of Postgres as well. And we do that through our support subscriptions, which I won't go into detail here, but that's basically the main difference, right? You're not paying for a license cost, you're paying for ongoing support, upkeep, and skilled support, as well as highly engineered distributions. A little bit more background about Crunchy. We were founded in 2012. You can see we've been working in the Kubernetes space really since 2014 with the creation of Crunchy Data cartridges for OCP v2, right? So that was kind of pre-Kubernetes operator patterns. We achieved common criteria certification, which essentially that means we have a trusted certified process. That means our enterprise customers can have confidence that when you get a Postgres distribution from Crunchy, it's run through all the paces in terms of build quality, testing, security patching, and just to ensure that it's going to run in your environment the way you want it to, the way you expect it to, every time when you use a Crunchy distribution of Postgres. We released our first version of our operator in 2017, And fast forwarding to 2020, we basically did a complete rewrite and a brand new release of our operator, which I'm going to show a short demo a little bit later today. But essentially, if you go visit our website, you're actually going to see we have two different versions of our operator, our version 4.x and our version 5.x. 5.x is our fully Kubernetes native way. If you're just getting into Kubernetes space and wanting to kind of test it out, recommend you start with that, as that one is what's going to be the future of our operator. The 4.x will eventually be phased out, but we still support that for the time being. With that, I do want to spend just a few moments kind of level setting on kind of what I view as, what is DevOps, right? And so my background, I come out of the federal government space, former Air Force officer, former Intel officer. And really my take on it is DevOps is the ability to ship new features, run them in production, and meet day 2 operation needs, right? And so it's the merging of those two elements, right? The dev side and the ops side, and making sure that you've got a tech platform and a tech stack that supports both developers and operators. But so that raises the question: what do developers want, right? And so in my experience on the DoD side, most developers, they want a modern, responsive, flexible, open source software stack that's got an active community continually adding new features, right? They want they want the current state of the art. They don't want to be working on old technology. They don't want to have to maintain old software. They want to be able to use the current state of what's being developed and deployed into the open source community to take advantage of all those new features to deliver mission capabilities. And so, developers love playing with new features. They love adding in new things. And that's awesome, right? That's what developers should be doing. They should be focused on delivering the best capabilities to satisfy mission needs. But that oftentimes comes into conflict with what the ops side of the house wants, right? From an operational perspective, those day 2 operations teams, right? They want a tried and true tech stack. They don't want to have to be troubleshooting any bugs in operations, right? And that makes their lives so much harder to keep actual production capabilities up and running. So they want that tried and true tech stack that they know has run reliably in large enterprises, that has robust documentation to support it, so they can go and figure out things on their own. And more importantly, they want to know that it's being monitored and patched for security vulnerabilities, and that there's known reliable pathways for upgrades, as well as it's backed by skilled support, so they can call someone if something goes wrong at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning, right? Because that's typically when something's going to go wrong, it's going to happen at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning when you're trying to get some sleep and rest on the weekend. So they want to be able to call someone and get help and get their application back up and running as quickly as possible if something does go wrong. Well, Crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes gives meets both those needs. As I covered real briefly in our history, in Crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes is built off all those years of experience that Crunchy has in running and supporting Postgres in general for large enterprise environments, and then taking all those enterprise concerns and building them into a Kubernetes native Postgres operator that meets developers' needs. Right, so Crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes delivers both features that both devs and operators love and makes their lives easier. So what does that encompass? Well, from a developer's perspective, right, Postgres, it gives you a variety of different data types that you can work with, right? From everything from structured data to unstructured data in JSON format. It's got a variety of robust, both open source as well as proprietary extensions. It's got robust geospatial support with the Postgres extension that continues to evolve and add new features and functionality. As I mentioned, it can accommodate JSON-B, right? So NoSQL databases are kind of the current rage. Well, you can do NoSQL just right along SQL inside Postgres and get the best of both worlds. And obviously, you get a whole array of additional enterprise as well as developer-friendly features in a robust database that has an active community continuing building and supporting it. And Postgres has been under development for the better part of 30 plus years. And it continues to grow in features and functionality and reliability. And it's been around, and it's been satisfying large enterprise workloads, and it's a very common database of choice for developers, and it continues to grow in popularity. Well, now when you combine Postgres with the support that Crunchy Data delivers, you get that really robust enterprise support that ops teams are really looking for in a tried and true data service that they can rely on to manage their mission critical data. So Crunchy Data provides ongoing delivery of our Postgres distributions. That includes patches, bug fixes, updates, and upgrades. We provide that 24/7, 365 technical support that those ops teams want to have on hand in case something happens that is beyond their technical ability to respond to quickly. We don't cap the number of instances that you can provide through that. We don't tier our support, right? There's no tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. All of our support customers receive the same level of support regardless of the amount of Postgres that you're using. As I mentioned, it's 24/7, 365 US-based support. So you're getting the best support available in the Postgres community, and it's staffed by all skilled Postgres engineers. So we don't staff our help desk with just triage personnel that are going to respond to you that say, hey, we received your ticket and we'll get back to you in the next business day. When you submit a support ticket to us, you are actually getting in touch with a skilled Postgres engineer. So our customers on the ops side really like that, and they have a high level of confidence that they're going to get their issues resolved very quickly if they submit a support ticket to us. We are tied into the broader industry ecosystem, both the Postgres ecosystem as well as a variety of hardware and software providers. And as I mentioned, we provide deep expertise both in Postgres as well as the Kubernetes space. And we leverage all that to deliver a very feature-rich, fully Kubernetes native Postgres experience for both developers and operators. So getting a little bit more into what Kubernetes for Postgres entails, right? So it allows you to deploy your full Postgres cluster in a fully declarative manner, right? And I'm going to show an example of what that really looks like and what that means. But essentially, what you can do is you just define your Postgres cluster in code and then hit deploy, and Kubernetes does the work for you along with our operator and our container suite. Because it's fully declarative, it means it's GitOps ready, right? So you can deploy our Kubernetes operator using your choice of Helm Customize or OLM. Makes it super easy to get started, right? And I'm going to show you just how easy it is to get a cluster start up and running so developers can start developing really quickly. And it's also, we make it super easy to upgrade your cluster in Kubernetes. As of our 5.1 release, which was just a few weeks ago, not only can you do minor version upgrades between Postgres instances, but you can do major version upgrades, right? And if you ask any operators, that's a typical bane of their existence, trying to do upgrades on anything and making sure that it doesn't break their production application. We provide a seamless, painless way of doing upgrades and allow the operator to manage those upgrades for you, so your ops team doesn't have to figure out how they're going to upgrade their entire tech stack. We do that very straightforward in a very simple way for Postgres. And as I've talked about, all of this is production grade. We've been supporting large enterprise customers, both in the DoD, federal space, as well as on the commercial side in commercial banking, healthcare, and a growing variety of sectors since 2012. And we've taken all of that experience and we continue to roll it into not only of our distributions, but our support and our documentation. So our distributions have been put through the paces, and more large enterprises are turning to Crunchy to support their large Postgres instances. All right, a little bit more about Crunchy. I'm going to go through those things in a little bit more detail, and then in a few minutes exactly what this means in reality. So as I said, crunchy Postgres for Kubernetes is declarative. From both a developer and an operator's perspective, this means you can very easily specify how large of an instance you want. Do you want just a single node? Do you want multiple instances? Do you want to scale dynamically? All of that can be defined in your code base, and then you apply it to your Kubernetes cluster. And as I said, the operator does the work for you. There's no manually going in, spinning up individual instances of Postgres, trying to configure all of that stuff yourself. It's very straightforward and takes a lot of the work off the developer and operator's hands to provide a production grade cluster that is suitable for development as well. And because it's fully declarative, as I mentioned, it allows you to automatically configure your production requirements. So, and this being a largely government audience, I know a huge concern is security as well. Well, our Kubernetes operator comes out of the box with TLS enabled by default between all of our connections. So you can see on that little graphic on the right there, all those little locks in between each one of our components. TLS is enabled by default through each one of our components. That means all the communication between those components is encrypted. And while we provide our out of the box certificates, we do allow our customers to bring their own credentials, right? So in the DoD space, that'd be PKIs. You do have the ability of loading your PKIs and having those be used as your credential management or your credentials to secure your communications throughout your cluster. So again, we try and address large enterprise requirements, and this is a common requirement that we see across the board. And so it just comes out of the box by default as part of our Kubernetes operator. And as I mentioned before, it is built for GitOps, no matter what stage of the pipeline that you're trying to run at. So everything from a single node development instance to your staging, to your production environment, right? It makes it very easy to spin up Postgres in a consistent way, in a way that can move through each one of those stages of the pipeline in a known methodical way. So there's no surprises, and it's very easy to progress through each stage of your CI/CD pipeline. But the really cool thing, and especially from an enterprise and government perspective, our operator comes out of the box with self-healing capabilities, right? So it comes with a disaster recovery, high availability, and self-healing capability that if any component of the Postgres cluster itself goes down for whatever reason, it's going to detect that, and it's going to auto-fail over to a known good instance of your cluster and restore it back to running capability with very minimal downtime. And I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like in the demo here at the end. And I'm keeping an eye on the time, so I'm going to step a little bit quick here so I can get to the demo. And then, as I mentioned, we make updating your Postgres instance in Kubernetes very, very easy. And one last point before I jump to the demo. We are infrastructure agnostic. So essentially that means wherever you're deploying Kubernetes, whether it's in a proprietary cloud environment like AWS, Azure, GCP, or if you're deploying Postgres, such as OpenShift on-prem, or even OpenShift in one of those other environments, we work in each one of those environments, which means your data is portable across all those environments without any rework. It makes it very, very easy to migrate between your cloud environments. And happy to talk in more detail about that with anybody who has interest in that. And so with that, I'm going to end my slideshow, and I'm going to jump over to the demo real quick. All right, so I just want to confirm, am I still sharing my screen, Brian?
You sure are. Looks great.
All right, great. All right, so what we've got set up here is the demo environment that you're going to see is we've got OpenShift cluster running in the cloud, right? And right now I've pre-deployed our operator. It's a very straightforward step. Takes hardly any time at all, but just for the sake of time, we pre-deployed the operator. So we've got that running in our OpenShift environment, but you can see there's nothing else running in the environment there. And over here, we've got just a Kubernetes command line tool called K9s running, so you can kind of see what's going on in real time. So same thing, we've got our operator deployed into the OpenShift namespace. And then I'm going to be watching what's going on down here just so everybody can kind of follow along and track what's going on. Then what we also have over here is, here's the fully declarative file that I'm going to use to deploy a Postgres cluster into Kubernetes. And so you can see it's about 38 lines of code, right? And that's for a basic enterprise grade cluster. That's really all you need to kind of get things started. Now, there's a lot of other things you can do to customize and convert to your specific operation, but kind of to get up and running and just kind of test things out, this is really essentially what you need. And so what it does is it allows you to name your cluster. You tell it what image out of our container repository you want to be using, what Postgres version you want to be using, how many replicas that you want to have. Let me refresh this real quick. There we go. Sorry, that was a little out of date. How many replicas you want your database to have, the mode that it's going to go in, the amount of storage, right? But essentially, and then it also has a section for backups. Same type of information there. But that's the extent of the documentation, not documentation, the amount of the amount of information that's required to get a cluster up and running. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that file and I'm going to just use an open source deployment tool just to make it a little bit easier to follow along what's going on, a little bit more visually interesting. This is a tool called Argo. This is not something that Crunchy supports. It's just a tool that we use occasionally for demos. Just makes it a little bit easier to follow along, like I said. And before I get that going, I'm just going to go ahead and start a watch command over here so you can kind of see things as they start popping into the namespace. And so I'm currently monitoring the Kubernetes project space that we're going to be deploying our cluster into. And I'm just going to go ahead and deploy a Postgres cluster. So I'm just going to give it a name, right? DevOps demo. And this is all just Argo specific stuff. So anything that isn't particular to Crunchy, I'm just going to kind of gloss over, since I don't want to necessarily confuse the issue here. But here's where I start getting into Crunchy specific stuff. So the operator that I showed you in GitHub, right? So I'm just going to grab that same exact file and I'm going to point it to our Postgres installation path there, right? So customize Postgres. So that's the file that I showed over here on GitHub. And then I'm going to tell it where to go, right? So again, this is, since Argo is deployed into the same OpenShift cluster, it's all going to be deployed into the same environment there. Don't have to give it a namespace because it's going to create that for us by default. And so that's the extent of it, right? So really the Postgres, the Kubernetes or the Crunchy Postgres specific stuff was just the source file here. And it was that simple of pointing it to the file and giving it the specific path to follow. You could do the same thing through a command line tool or through a command line prompt or through your GitOps repo, right? But so now I'm just going to go ahead and hit create, and it's going to go reach out and it's going to pull that file down. Give it a second here. All right. So you can see the project's been created and we're going to start seeing some stuff pop in here, right? So you can see we've got an initial cluster being created already. And the first thing that it's going to do is it's actually going to create a backup job, and it's going to start running a backup initially. Now there's nothing to back up until the pod is actually up there. Oh, sorry, there's the backup. You can see we've got 2 instances because we told it we wanted 2 instances of Crunchy. And so you can see we've got one master node, which is a read-write node, and then we've got one read replica node. And that's needed to be able to enable the high availability features found in Crunchy Postgres. And so now you can see all of our jobs have completed. We've got two instances running. And now if we wanted to, we could hand that cluster over to a developer and they could start creating their data structures. They could start loading data into there, start doing their configuration. And that took what, like 30 seconds to actually get a cluster up and running. And that's a fully enterprise grade cluster. But so I want to do a quick demo here and show exactly what do I mean by enterprise grade cluster. Well, I talked about HA, disaster recovery. And so you can see this instance right here is our master node, right? And so that's where you're doing all your read write transactions. So I'm going to go up here and that's that node. And every developer likes seeing this. I'm just going to go ahead and blow that away, right? So catastrophic failure, that instance of the database disappears, and the operator is going to detect that, and you're going to watch it fail over in real time. So if I delete that, you can see the master went away and it already detected that, promoted it, and now the read replica has already been promoted to master, and it's recovering the instance that I deleted, right? So it's bringing that back up, and it's going to bring it back into a good state, and it's going to repopulate that from the now master node. You can see it's almost up, and now that node that I deleted is back up and running in a read replica. As soon as that failover happened, the application was back up and running, and that happened within a couple of seconds. So very, very minimal, almost no downtime. But the other thing I want to show is, not just oftentimes it's not just the database that ends up being corrupted. It can be services, right? So if you're in there, somebody accidentally deletes the cluster, the external IP that actually makes the Postgres cluster available to the application, right? Well, that goes down. Doesn't matter if your database is up, the application can't get to the database. Well, we monitor that too and recover that too. So if I were to delete that service, right, we detect that and we restore the service right away, right? So it makes the entire stack very, very robust. And then the last thing I'm going to show real quick is if I actually remote into, let's see, our master node now is this one, or remote into this, and now I'm actually running inside the container, all right? And I do an ls and I list here. This PG data folder is actually where all of your critical data for your Postgres cluster is actually stored, right? And so if I go in there, you can see here's all your really critical information, right? Your backup configurations, everything that Postgres needs to actually run is contained in here. And I'm going to do, again, the most fun thing in the world. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that, right? So we're going to simulate what happens if if your data files actually get corrupted, or someone gets in there and they do something directly in the pod. Well, so I've got a little bit of a command here that is going to just help automate things for the sake of time. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to list that folder again. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to delete all the files found in that folder. And then we're going to watch it repopulate, right? So now this isn't the pod being deleted. You're not gonna see anything, change really down here. Well, you're actually going to see it. Sorry, you're going to see it fail over, but the pod itself isn't necessarily going to go down. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And so there's all the files that we just saw. And now we're going to go ahead and delete those. So they're gone, and we're going to watch it. You saw the failover happen down here, right? So the master failed, and the replica got promoted to master, and now the one that the PG data file got deleted is back up in read replica mode. So with that, I am right at the top or the bottom of the hour. That was a whirlwind overview of Crunchy and our Kubernetes operator. Hopefully that gives you a taste of exactly how we enable both the developer side as well as the operational side, and meet the underlying security concerns of large federal agencies. With that, Brian, I'm going to take a breath, take a drink of water, hand it back to you, and wrap it up.
Wow, Adam, thank you for that. It was interesting to see, and excuse my analogy, but essentially how bomb-proof it is. That it's really facilitating that robust DevSecOps pipeline. With that, while you take a drink, Adam, and a breath, does anyone have a question? We've got folks from US Transcom, IRS. Anyone have any questions?
Actually, Brian, before we drop off, I'm just going to throw up one quick last slide, just to remind people of our contact info. So if you do have any questions, I lost my screen now. Oh, whoops. Well, anyway, yeah, feel free to reach out to me or anyone at Crunchy. You can reach us at crunchydata.com, or my email address is adam.tim@crunchydata.com. I throw it up at the beginning of the presentation as well.
And I just dropped
go
it
back
in the
and-
chat too.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I
Yep.
appreciate it, Brian.
Absolutely. Because I'm sure folks may want to go back to their teams and drag you in for more details. That's usually how it is. And for everyone, this is really just about appetizers. As we roll with these events, it is just to make you hungry and more curious and ensure you're aware of all the various products that are available to help you on your DevOps journey. Absolutely. Adam, thank you so much. There's a number of other folks here from Crunchy Data. Thank you all for coming on stage. Sure appreciate it. And thank Kirsten, anything else from your standpoint, man?
Just to say thank you, and our next presentation will be 2 weeks from now, and it'll be Amazon that time.
All right. Yep.
Awesome.
Looking
Well,
forward to
thank
that.
you so
in
much
another 2
again,
weeks.
Brian, for having us on. And yeah, like I said, we try and make it as bomb-proof as possible. And we would love to talk to anybody who would like to learn more about that or any of our distributions.
All righty. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Meeting you. Bye.
Thanks.